Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Alexandria Polizzi with us today. She is SPHR, PhD. She's a creator of an award-winning solution to help your workplace thrive. She has the ICO Global Liaison for Psychological Health and Safety. We're going to talk about workplace mental health, leadership resiliency, and burnout today. Burnout prevention, of course. This pod is brought to you by podfire.com. That's my podcasting agency. If you want to start your pod, scale your pod, or monetize your podcast, you can go to podfire.com. Alessandria, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and about what you're up to nowadays.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. So my background is I spent 20 years as a HR professional. My last position was the chief people officer for the fourth largest veterinary hospital company here in the United States. And that's where I personally burned out and was also exposed to the need within our practices for mental health support and realized that there was a ton of research on how we can create healthier workplaces by both protecting the harm that can happen as a result of work on the mental health of our employees in the same way that we protect the physical health of our employees. And that there are a ton of recognized emotional hazards to leading others. And so there's been plenty of research, decades worth of research on the emotional weight of leading others. And so given that I've been in leadership development for 20 years, I feel like this is the thing that has been missing. And so I decided that instead of continuing on in my one job, one organization approach, I was going to just focus on this area. And that's what we've been doing for 3 years.
And you worked at big companies such as 7-Eleven, Pizza Hut, Intuit. How were these companies from a culture standpoint, and did they have anti-burnout mechanism?
Well, we weren't talking openly about burnout back when I was working for those companies. All of them very different cultures, very different cultures. Everything from, and it's funny because when you go from one culture to another, what you are in one culture, you aren't necessarily in another. So, I went from one culture where I was one of the least process-oriented people to another company where I was the most process-oriented person. So it's just context is everything. And that's why culture is so important, is to find a place where you can be your authentic self and that's respected.
And you juggled in between corporate and being a founder. When was the moment at which you understood that you needed to be in control of your own destiny and take the foundership path?
So I completely burned out, right? And I realized that I was not in a good place. And so I also had a big birthday, and I decided that my gift to myself for that birthday was to spend 3 months doing whatever I wanted. And because it was during a pandemic and it sucked to turn that age in the middle of a pandemic. So I just did whatever I wanted, and I kind of never stopped. I had this aha moment. So I've been in learning and organizational development for a long time. My first career was an English professor, and I've always thought of my mission as helping make the world a better place through education. And so when I transitioned to doing education in the corporate space, that bridged very quickly. But I became concerned about being an L&D because it just seemed like a precarious role and department, easy to cut, not always well funded. And so I had this aha moment when I was starting this journey of, wait, I can do what I do best, which is help people learn and make the world a better place through education for myself. And by doing that, by starting my own company that does the thing that I so enjoy, I can have bigger impact on more people. And so that's when I had to be, the age I am to come to that awareness and insight, but here we are. And so, look, Gen X is aging differently. And so for many of us, as we enter into middle age, it's an opportunity for us to redefine who we are.
I want to dive deep into that burnout. So what were the symptoms how did you deal with that? Because you were the chief people officer. So it's like, yeah, I'm burning out people. um,
Yeah.
Tell me
I
a bit more
didn't,
about it.
yeah, I didn't realize how bad it was until my mother and my husband were meeting about my mental health without me. So they were concerned. I thought, crying in the bathtub every night, that seems normal. Um, so there are three symptoms of burnout. I've learned a lot about it. That was part of my recovery. Three symptoms of burnout. One is lowered cognitive ability. They call it lowered performance. Um, uh, Exhaustion, and cynicism. And the ones that really that surprised me was the cynicism and the lowered cognitive ability. I thought I was just getting old. I thought I was losing my touch. I was in a pretty toxic situation. And so I was buying into some of the messages that were being told to me, and it just wasn't a good mix. So when I realized I had hit that wall, everything kind of fell into place. And the problem was I couldn't find a solution to help me. And that's what took me on this journey. And that's why I've built what I wish I would have had, as many founders do, right? And so that's really when I realized it was a problem. One of the things about burnout, I'll add, is that we believe, many of us believe, oh, if I spend the weekend or I take a couple weeks off, I'm going to be better. It can take on average about 2 years to fully recover from burnout. So it's not a wise choice to go down that path, because it takes a lot out on you.
Well, now I understand why you were laughing last time that I shared my calendar with you. Um, and yeah, you got me really thinking because I have all these three symptoms now. It's Yeah, I imposed a lot on myself lately. I love challenging myself. I love pain. I love growth. I rested during the holidays, but that's like literally 5 to 7 days, if seven
Not
days,
enough.
So yeah, you got me thinking here.
I did give you
Because
a hard
the
time.
cognition, I'm not seeing it like post holiday, but just right before, yeah, I was with a guy. He told me he was neurodivergent, had autism, dyslexia, and so forth. Me, I never had dyslexia, but I started seeing dyslexia in me. Yeah, for a period pre-wedding in which I was working quite hard last year, and I started seeing light amnesia, in which I would forget like details or names or that I spoken to people. I mean, when you speak to 20 people a day, it's somewhat normal, but yeah, what should I do? Like, I don't want to stop. I like it, I like this life. But
Yes.
cynicism, I've seen it a lot in me also. Like, I just dump all my shit on Twitter. What should I do there?
Okay, so if you think about your energy, you have finite amount of energy. And I know for entrepreneurs it is really hard because the double-edged sword is we love what we do, right? I get up every morning at 4 in the morning, not on purpose, but because I'm excited to go and do what I get to do, right? Especially when I was writing my book, and I'm writing a second book. I tripped down the stairs like a kid on Christmas morning. But I have to also pace myself and pay attention. And so some things to pay attention to are when you're doing work that isn't in your strength, right? So I just finished editing my book and I found myself so tired and like really emotionally exhausted because details are not my strength. And I didn't give myself enough time to do that in a way that was going to be healthy for me. I was just going to push through. Did not highly unrecommend, right? Zero stars. So pay attention to the things where you're in flow and then give yourself time and opportunities to recover, like balance it with the things that are a challenge for you. Um, my one of the guests I had on my podcast, I love him. He's out of Australia, Christopher. He Shen, he's said, you start every day with this filled balloon, and throughout the day, that balloon starts to diminish. And he said that, that's natural, that's how it should be. But if you don't fill that balloon, then you start the next day with a slightly less full balloon, and then you don't have as much to give. And so, common causes of burnout are things like doing things that are outside of your strength for a long period of time, working in a space that doesn't align with your values, um, lack of role clarity or not knowing how success will be measured. I mean, those are just three. There's a whole bunch of them that have been documented, but those are some examples.
Interesting. Yeah, sleep is quite important too. So I make sure I get my full sleep, not pre-wedding. Like it was ridiculous. I had four dogs basically. Long story short, one was pregnant and plus the wedding and working and plus the classic agenda, right? And but it's like this glass that keeps filling and just add a
Mm-hmm.
little drop and then it's too much. But nowadays, yeah, I take care a bit more of my sleep. I also try to limit my caffeine intake. Stuff
Mm.
like just one more cup of coffee in my case can have disastrous effect. Like I start having headaches, feeling a bit more anxious and feeling a bit more angry. So I try to limit these things out. Now, in your case nowadays, do you have some kind of routine or habits that keep you energized and on track?
Yeah, I just literally woke up from a nap. I literally just got up from my nap. So I take what I call a coffee nap every day. So like I said, I wake up when I wake up. It's usually around 4. Excited for the day. But then by 3, I'm like toast. So I drink a cup of coffee, take a coffee nap. By the time the caffeine kicks in, I'm ready for like I call it my second day. Um, so that's something that works for me. Some things that you want to do is every once in a while, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Schitt's Creek, but on one of the episodes, they talk about taking a selfish. And that is doing something stupid that you enjoy that you normally would like feel guilty for doing because you're not being productive. Like, look, this capitalistic thing that we have to be productive, it's all fiction, right? So take a selfish, do some stuff that is ridiculous and dumb that only you enjoy. And that can be just a great way to kind of take care of yourself. When I did the research, there were 3 most documented activities that you can do that can help you either bolster against burnout or bounce back from it. And they are, I call it the YMCA. They are mindfulness, so paying attention and listening to yourself, which it sounds like you do a good job of. Self-compassion, which is speaking to yourself with kindness, like you would someone that you love and care for. That's a challenge for many of us. And then the last one is acceptance, which is identifying what you're trying to control that's not actually controllable and learning to let go of the things you can't control. So in the research, there's been decades of research has been talk about burnout since the 60s. Um, those are the 3 most highly documented activities that you can do that can help you navigate these big changes, big challenges, pushing yourself. You also need those pieces too.
Quite interesting. Yeah, I see myself applying these, but it seems, yeah, in a high performer's schedule, like just a couple of things can put you off track. Let's say that I have, I don't know, 3 crappy meetings, in a day, or yeah, like a couple of boring podcasts per day, like I can get pretty on edge, and I just need my wife to be telling me something, and next thing you know, I'm angry. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, leave me alone, or like, don't tell me what to do. As an entrepreneur, that's a classic. Um, what do you see in your clients? You work with like high performers like myself. Do you work with entrepreneurs? Do you work with corporate teams? Who do you work with, and what do you often see in them as symptoms of burnout?
So yes, I work with all of those. And so common symptom of burnout is exhaustion. Those 3 actually, I'll say the cynicism, the lack of sharpness. And there's a burnout inventory. I think I have a link to it on my website people can take that will tell you if it's burnout. I've actually had people take it and I say, I don't think that it's burnout. You probably need to speak to either a physician or a mental health professional. Um, but but I do think, especially with high performers, I really want to double down on self-compassion because there is a mindset, and I am one of them, that if I am kind to myself, if I let up on myself, I will lose my edge. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say that. I said that. That's BS. The more you can care for yourself and talk to yourself with kindness, the actually better you'll perform. And that includes being a leader. So when we practice self-compassion, and that's speaking to ourselves with kindness, talking to ourselves like we would a friend, etc., It activates the nurturing parts of our brains, which enables us to be better able to be a partner, to be a leader, to be a teammate. And so I would say for high performers, practice self-coaching instead of self-criticism.
And in a team or in a relationship, how can that burnout sensation be amplified? What happens when there's complexity, when there's people you have a hard time working with, or with people that are just different than you?
Yeah, that's where acceptance comes in, right? You can't control what other people do, and that includes what they think about you. And so as long as you're clear, one of the things that is highly recommended is to be really clear about what is it that you want to stand for. If you watch Ted Lasso, you know, he has that he says believe over the top of the door. What would your sign say? What is the thing that you want to be known for? And when we can reconnect to our why, then we're better able to bounce back in difficult situations like working with people that we don't necessarily enjoy or where there's conflict, etc. Because then we can prioritize what's most important for us to pay attention to.
So what would be your top objectives for this year? What do you want to focus on?
Well, we're really focused on getting as many organizations as possible to help them start implementing the World Health Organization's guidelines for building a mentally healthy workplace. We're launching the book next week, actually, that helps organizations build their strategy for addressing workplace mental health. And so it's really about helping to work with organizations to make sure that their biggest investment, which is their people, is at its highest performance.
So what will you do when challenge will show up? How do you stay resilient and stay the course?
Not well all the time. But you know, I pay attention when I'm doing those things that are not in my strengths. Like I said, editing the book last week was a challenge. But the self-awareness and that checking in with myself. Well, there was one study I like to quote a lot that where they practice self-reflection, which is just checking in with yourself and seeing how you're doing, observing how you're feeling, what are the thoughts. There was a group that did this for 10 days, 15 minutes a day, and they saw a 25% improvement in their overall well-being. And all they were doing was checking in with themselves. So just taking the time. And so because I'm busy like you, I use the space between meetings to do a check-in. So think about our Zoom call, right? Our Zoom call started a few minutes late. That's fine. That doesn't bother me because guess what? I'm not going to use it on an email where I can partially pay attention. I mean, that's my time to check in and see how I'm doing. And so I find those little spaces where I can take care of myself.
Love that. What happens when, for example, you're reaching out to the market and you're seeing that your style or your offering is not what they want, and that potentially requires change or painful changes in mindset? Or let's say that you have a goal and you're not reaching that goal, and you understand that you need to change how you behave and how you act and how you think. Do you have any tricks for changing quicker and getting from point A to point B faster?
I don't recommend changing. I recommend being really clear about who you are and what you want to achieve and what your values are. And if what you're doing isn't serving you, it's getting in the way of achieving that, then use that as a learning opportunity. But look, for my business, there's kind of a dichotomy. There are organizations and leaders who believe in that human-centric work and that taking care of the humans that they employ is advantageous, and they believe in science because all of the science shows that it is advantageous financially to the business, performance, innovation, learning. I mean, I can go on. And then there's others who just are afraid of feelings, or they feel like, well, I don't have the time to take care of people, which taking care of people does not take time. And I decided a long time ago, I have no time for those people. I would rather spend my time finding the people who already get it than convincing those that don't. And I thank them for being really clear about this is never going to work out. Like, even if I did the effort, by the time we get there and I showed you the ROI, if you don't believe the data on the front end, you're not going to believe the data on the back end. So I I work from abundance myself. I have abundance mindset. There is plenty of work to be done, and there are plenty of people who need this work. And so those who opt out Those are just those who opt out.
What problems are you seeing in today's society, and what would be potential solutions to fix those?
Well, there's a mental health crisis. And I want to raise some, I want to share a few that are beyond probably the obvious, right? So yeah, pandemic. Okay. Um, Actually, the biggest crisis for our mental health is climate change. Because as natural disasters increase, as scarcity increases, as people become dislocated because they're no longer habitable where they live, uh, all of these things impact our mental health. And so that is going to continue to be a growing crisis. Secondarily, when people experience trauma during the times that their brains develop, that results in physical changes to the brain, which show up in our behavior later on in life. The next generation coming to work, 100% of them experienced a traumatic childhood event. And so we have to pay attention to that. And then also we have the existential crisis of AI. And so there are a lot of pressures on our mental health. And our brains, our 200,000-year-old brains, are not used to this level of change or stress. And so you aren't weak for having feelings and emotions. That's your brain doing what it was designed to do, which is to protect you. But to think that we can just push it aside is, I think, the biggest crisis that we can put in front of ourselves.
And how should one react mentally with COVID, with Ukraine, with
Yes,
Hamas and Israel? It seems that
yes.
there's a lot of leaders that are not taking accountability. It seems that there's a lot of testosterone in this society and the lack of care for the impact of one's drive and ambition. So how should we react to that? How should I react to that as an entrepreneur?
Well, one, make sure that you're okay. That's the best thing you can do is to check in with yourself and make sure that you're okay. And then make it not okay to pretend that people are machines. We are not machines. In fact, the machines are machines, and the machines are going to become even more human. We can't be more machine-like. So I think recognizing and acknowledging that there are, like you said, the Ukraine, there are so many global events, our economy that impact our mental health. And that, again, that doesn't make us weak. And we can't ignore it just because we don't think we can fix it. We can put things into place that will help people and help our teams thrive even in the face of these challenges. We just have to be aware of how to do that and conscious about it.
Well, thanks for today, Alessandra. Where can people find out more about you?
Well, our website, verdantconsulting.net. I'm on TikTok. I'm Dr. Al Polizzi, or your HR Big Sister on TikTok. Um, and of course on LinkedIn.